Hey everyone, welcome back to Revenge Reloaded. The instant my sister Rowan shoved that birthday cake into my face, hard enough to snap my world sideways, frosting mixing with blood as I hit the floor while she laughed, bright and sharp, I tried to believe it was just a joke, the way everyone else shrugged it off. What they had no clue about was that the ER X-ray would reveal not just a new fracture, but old ones matching her so-called accidents, and when her hidden notes surfaced, a family dinner arrest would expose years of deliberate harm forever. My name is Avery Dalton, and I'm 36 now. I knew birthdays could be messy, but I never expected mine to end with my sister's hands shoving a cake into my face so hard that the world snapped sideways. I remember the smear of frosting, the sting of blood mixing into it, and Rowan's laughter, bright, sharp, deliberate, as I hit the floor. People rushed in only to shrug it off. It was just a joke. While my vision pulsed blue and white, I tried to believe them. I tried to stand. But the next morning, at the ER, the doctor froze at my X-ray and asked me a question no sister should ever trigger. Stay until the end, I'll reveal the footage, the notes, and how the cuffs clicked at that final family dinner. Before I dive deeper, what time is it for you right now, and where are you watching from? I'm curious how far this story travels. To understand how this exploded, you need the backstory of growing up in the Dalton house. On the outside, we looked normal, suburban Denver, family photos, holidays together. Inside, attention flowed one way, toward Rowan. She was the magnetic one, loud and dramatic, the sun we all orbited. Mom, Marlene, lit up for her. Dad, Gerald, planned around her. I was the quiet one, the steady one. The daughter who didn't need much, because, as Mom always said, Avery is strong. She can handle herself. What she really meant was that Rowan needed the spotlight more. I learned early to fit into cracks. To swallow hurts, sharp comments, moments that felt wrong but were brushed off as harmless. Peace became a performance, and I played my part well. I didn't grow up unloved, that's the complicated part. I was loved in theory, in reassurance, in phrases like, you'll be fine, you're so independent. Love sounded generous, but it came with unspoken conditions. Don't ask for more. Don't take up space. Don't need us the way she does. I noticed it in small moments. Birthday mornings where my cake came from the grocery store on the way home, while hers was ordered weeks ahead. Family trips where my suitcase stayed in the closet because I was better off saving for school. Graduation days where photos were taken of everyone else, and I stood off to the side holding jackets, watching milestones happen without me in the frame. When I left for community college, no one cried at the airport. Actually, there wasn't even an airport trip. Just a quick hug in the driveway and a reminder to call when I got there. I paid my own way, worked extra shifts, learned how to stretch money and time because I had to. Every time I succeeded, it quietly reinforced the story my parents told themselves. See? She's fine. She doesn't need us like Rowan does. Years later, when I moved to Seattle for work, the pattern didn't change. Phone calls were brief. Updates about my life were acknowledged, then redirected. How's work? Good. That's nice. Did you hear what your sister's dealing with right now? I became fluent in listening, in being supportive, in staying calm while my own life unfolded slightly off to the side. There was one dinner, years later, where my mother finally said the words out loud that I already knew. What shocked me wasn't the ranking, it was how comfortable they were saying it. How obvious it had always been, as if I'd agreed to it without ever realizing I had. After that dinner, nothing changed on the surface. And that was the point. After that dinner, nothing changed on the surface. And that was the point. My parents didn't start calling anymore. My sister didn't apologize. Life continued smoothly and uninterrupted, as if they hadn't just said the quiet part out loud. But something inside me shifted. The requests kept coming, just like before. A text from my mom asking if I could watch the kids for a few hours, just this once. A casual mention of bills piling up, dropped lightly like a weather update. A forwarded message from my sister about a payment that had accidentally bounced, followed by a laughing emoji. No one ever asked directly. They never had to. The assumption was enough. I started noticing how automatic my old responses had been. Of course. No problem. I'll figure it out. This time, I didn't answer right away. At first, it felt wrong, like I was breaking some invisible rule I'd been living by my entire life. I'd see my phone light up and feel that familiar pull in my chest, the reflex to smooth things over before they escalated. Instead, I let the phone sit on the counter. I finished my coffee. I went to work. I lived my day. Nothing exploded. No emergencies. No disasters. Just silence. Then a second message. Then a third, each one more pointed than the last. You okay? You've been really quiet. I was quiet because I was paying attention. I started looking at my own life with the same clarity I brought to my work, my finances, my schedule, my energy. I realized how much of it had quietly been allocated to everyone else. Money drifting out in small, regular amounts. Time kept flexible, just in case. Plans never fully committed to, because someone might need me. So I began separating things. Not dramatically. No announcements. Just practical changes. I moved money into accounts only I could access. Cancelled shared logins. Stopped covering small expenses that had never been discussed but were always expected. When my sister asked if I could spot her, just for now, I replied with a simple, I can't. No explanation. No apology. The reaction was immediate. My mom called, her voice tight with concern that felt more like confusion. Is everything okay? You seem distant. I told her the truth, calmly. I'm just busy. She paused, waiting for the rest of the sentence. When it didn't come, she filled the space herself. You know your sister is under a lot of pressure right now. I did know. I'd always known. What I was realizing was that knowing didn't make it my responsibility. That was the turning point. Not a fight. Not a dramatic declaration. Just the moment I understood that being the strong one had become a convenient excuse for everyone else to stop carrying their share. I didn't know then how hard they'd test that boundary. I was about to find out. The call came on a weekday afternoon, right as I was finishing a meeting. I could hear it. Before anyone said a word, the edge in my mother's voice, tight and rushed, like someone trying to stay calm while standing on unstable ground. We need to talk, she said. Can you come by this weekend? She didn't explain. She didn't have to. I'd learned their language. Urgency without details meant something had gone wrong. Something expensive. When I arrived in Denver, the house felt heavier than I remembered. The air was stale. The living room table was buried under envelopes, loose papers, bills, notices, documents scattered in a way meant to overwhelm. My sister sat rigid on the couch, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the floor. My dad avoided my gaze entirely. No one asked how I was. My mom started talking fast, words tumbling over each other. A business decision that didn't pan out, payments delayed, contracts signed with optimism and very little margin for error. She kept repeating the word temporary, like saying it enough times would make it true. I listened without interrupting, hands folded neatly in my lap, the way I always had. Then came the pause. The collective inhale. The moment they all looked at me. Well, my dad said finally, clearing his throat, you're in a stable place. There it was. You don't have kids. You handle things better than most. The assumption dressed up as logic. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I asked a question. What's the plan if I don't help? The room went silent. Too silent. My mom looked hurt. My dad looked confused. My sister looked panicked. Helping had never been optional in their equation. Time, to them, didn't mean thinking. It meant calculating how much I'd give. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, something settled in me. Not anger. Clarity. The next morning, I made 2 appointments. One with a therapist. One with a legal advisor. If I was stepping into this mess, it wouldn't be as their safety net. It would be on my terms. I came back the following weekend, not with answers, but with clarity. The house looked the same as it always had, but the energy inside felt different, tighter, desperate, the kind of quiet that comes from people waiting to be rescued. Papers were still spread across the table, now stacked into neater piles, as if organization alone might turn chaos into control. Bills here. Payment notices there. Contracts clipped. Together with bent corners from nervous handling. My parents were already seated. My sister sat beside them, her husband hovering near the doorway like he wasn't sure if he was welcome in the room or already part of the damage assessment. No one smiled when I walked in. No one offered coffee. I'm really glad you came, my mom said first, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her voice carried that brittle softness I knew well, the tone she used when she needed something but didn't want to say it out loud. I sat down slowly, set my bag at my feet, and said, let's talk. My dad launched into the explanation I'd already heard. Market downturns. Bad timing. Unexpected delays. He spoke like someone presenting a rehearsed case, hoping confidence would replace accountability. My sister nodded along, eyes glossy, adding stress about the kids, about how none of this was supposed to happen. Eventually, the words ran out. That's when my mom leaned forward. We just need help getting through this part, she said. Once things stabilize. How much? I asked. She blinked. My dad hesitated. My sister inhaled sharply, then answered for them. She said the number carefully, rounded, spoken softly as if volume could shrink it. I nodded. Then I asked, what's the plan after that? My dad frowned. What do you mean? I said evenly, what changes so this doesn't happen again? The question landed wrong. My mom's expression tightened. This isn't the time to interrogate us. I nodded again. Then it's not the time for me to write a check. The room shifted. My sister sat up straighter. We're family, she said, her voice rising just enough to carry emotion without turning into accusation. This isn't about plans. It's about helping. Helping who? I asked. She looked at me like the answer was obvious. Us. I glanced around the room. Who's helping me? No one spoke. My dad leaned forward. You're in a different position, he said. You're single. You're stable. You can afford to step in. There it was. The logic I'd heard my entire life. The math that always ended with me absorbing the cost. I can afford to step in, I said carefully, because I planned my life as if no one would ever catch me if I fell. My mom's eyes filled with tears. We didn't know you felt like that. You did, I said quietly. You just didn't think it mattered. The silence this time wasn't confusion. It was discomfort. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, sliding it onto the table between us. Every eye followed it. This is what I'm willing to do, I said. And how? My dad opened it first. His eyebrows knit together as he read. My mom leaned over his shoulder. My sister craned her neck, color draining from her face. This is a loan, my dad said flatly. Yes, I replied. With clear terms. My sister shook her head. Why are there conditions? Because this isn't an emergency donation, I said. It's structured help. My mom's voice trembled. You don't trust us. I trust patterns, I said. And the pattern in this family has been me fixing things quietly. The conditions weren't cruel. They weren't punitive. They were practical. Assets had to be sold before money changed hands. Spending documented. No new financial commitments without proof of sustainability. Family therapy wasn't a suggestion, it was a requirement. Everything in writing. My name, my credit, my future would never again be assumed as backup. My dad pushed the folder away. This is cold, he said. This is how banks treat people. I nodded. Then treat me like a bank, because when you needed emotional support, I was family. When you needed money, I was infrastructure. My sister's eyes filled with tears. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm stepping out of the role you wrote for me without asking. The words hung in the air. My mom reached for my hand, then hesitated. I gently pulled mine back. But you did, I said. And you said it out loud. My dad stared at the paperwork, jaw tight. So this is it. Sink or swim. No, I corrected. This is change, or repetition. Minutes passed. My sister wiped her cheeks. Her husband paced behind her. My parents whispered to each other in low, frantic tones. For the first time in my life, I didn't fill the silence. Finally, my dad looked up. We need time. You have 24 hours, I said, standing. Tomorrow I'll come back. Either we move forward with this, or we don't move forward at all. As I reached the door, my mom called my name. If we say no, she asked, her voice breaking, you're walking away? I paused, hand on the doorknob. I'm not walking away from you, I said. I'm walking toward myself. The next day, when I returned, the papers were signed. There were no speeches. No dramatic apologies. No excuses wrapped in sentiment. Just shaky signatures, tired faces, and the quiet weight of a decision that couldn't be undone. Relief filled the room, but so did loss. Something had shifted permanently. As I gathered my things to leave, my sister looked at me differently than she ever had before. Not with superiority. Not with expectation. With uncertainty. For the first time, I wasn't the problem she expected me to fix. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in quiet steps, each heavier than the last. The first change was practical. Assets were listed. Subscriptions were canceled. Expenses were tracked instead of ignored. Numbers stopped being abstract and started becoming limits. My parents downsized their expectations long before they downsized anything else, and that alone changed the tone of every conversation. Family therapy began a few weeks later. The first session was awkward and defensive. My dad spoke carefully, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. My mom cried more than she talked. My sister sat stiffly, arms crossed, as if accountability were a language she'd never been taught. I listened more than I spoke, not because I had nothing to say, but because I no longer needed to convince anyone of my reality. The truth had already been written down, signed, and agreed to. Something unexpected happened over time. The panic faded. The urgency softened. Without me quietly absorbing consequences, everyone else had to carry their share. My sister learned to sit with discomfort instead of handing it off. My parents stopped using phrases like, "we'll figure it out," when they really meant "Avery will fix it." The relationship didn't heal in a dramatic, movie-style way. There were no tearful breakthroughs or instant transformations. But space appeared, space where guilt used to live, space where obligation had pressed on my chest for years. Back in Seattle, my life felt steadier, lighter. I focused on my work. I slept better. I stopped bracing every time my phone buzzed. When I called my mom, it was to ask how she was, not what I could do. When I texted my sister, there was no follow-up request attached. The biggest change wasn't theirs. It was mine. I no longer felt responsible for maintaining the illusion that everything was fine. I no longer rushed to prove my worth by fixing problems that weren't mine. I learned that boundaries don't erase love. They define where love can exist without destroying you. One evening, sitting alone in my apartment, it hit me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I had already chosen myself. And that made all the difference. For a long time, I thought being last in my family meant I needed to try harder, give more, stay quieter, be easier to deal with. I thought love was something you earned by fixing problems that weren't yours and carrying weight no one asked you if you could hold. I was wrong. Being last was never a position to fight for. It was a sign to step out of the line entirely and build a life where my value didn't depend on sacrifice. Where my worth wasn't measured by how much I could absorb for other people. That shift didn't happen overnight. It didn't come with applause or approval. But it came with peace. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped negotiating my boundaries. I stopped waiting for permission to take up space in my own life. If this story feels uncomfortably familiar, if you're the strong one, the reliable one, the person everyone leans on without asking how heavy the load already is, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not selfish for protecting what's yours. You are not cruel for setting limits. You are not a bad daughter, son, sibling, or partner for refusing to be someone else's safety net at the cost of your future. Love is proven by how people protect you when it's inconvenient, not by how loudly they say family when money, time, or control is on the table. The moment I stopped playing the role they assigned me, I didn't lose my family. I found myself, and that was something no one could take away. If this story helped you breathe a little easier, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from and what part resonated most with you. Stories like this remind people they're not alone. And if you don't want to miss the next one, hit subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and don't miss the best part. You will love it. See you in the next story.